TheGuruMeditation.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Westchester Amiga User Group. Thanks for coming out today. It's been like raining cats and dogs. Like only the strong survive today.
This is true hardcore.
This is the heart for the hardcore peeps. And today I want to welcome back Manny from the Apollo team. As you might remember, there's two great videos on our channel with Manny giving a demo of the Vampire, and the Vampire has evolved since that meeting. And Manny's going to show us what's new. Today he's got a Vampire V4 with us. I think you can tell us, but I think the big takeaway is you can now do Amiga graphics over HDMI. Right?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. So as we promised last time, one of the big things with the V4 was doing the AGA over HDMI. So the V4 is now booting. It's on a 500. It's shipped out to team members that have number 22. So there's progress being made. So I thought it was a good idea to come in here and just show you some things maybe you don't always see, that there's a little progress being made in the scene, right? And that's always good to see.
I'm super excited. Today's going to be more of a workshop. No PowerPoint today. We're just going to hang out and have some
no
fun.
PowerPoints, guys. Enough of that.
All right, let's get going.
Cool. So the Vampire is, just really quick, it's an accelerator, essentially. Like back in the day, you would have an 030 accelerator. Right. If you were Mr. Moneybags, you would get an 060 accelerator. But if you're an average Joe, you can get a Vampire accelerator. So it does a few things. It gives you faster speed. It gives you now AGA. We're working on that. It gives you 16-bit sound, which it never really had as standard. It really ups the game in the Amiga graphics and sound and speed and velocity with a good degree of compatibility, a really good degree of compatibility. That's our goal. So it's an accelerator that's plugged into the machine right now. So the 500 never had AGA. This is doing AGA graphics right now. So here's an install I did. Just talk a little bit about the setup. This is standard Amiga 500, right? Literally untouched from back in the day. And I could show you what's under the hood. Sure. So I'll lift this up. There's the Vampire. So you see it sits inside the CPU socket. So the CPU socket is there. There's the FPGA. So that one chip has recreations of all the AGA chips, plus the processor.
Are the AGA graphics emulated, or are they running on a chip?
So it's not emulation, right? So emulation is where you have software running the hardware. Yeah. And you need a really fast processor to run all the AGA chips in parallel. Right. In this case here, the AGA chips are re-implemented. They're actually written using modern software technology that produces a hardware replica of the chip that then runs in a chip that's designed to recreate hardware. And so what you do is you can get multiple instances of the chip running at maximum speed. You're not dependent on one master processor to set the timing for everything. Each chip recreated on an FPGA runs at the maximum speed possible. So it's a step closer than emulation, right? It has a newly designed processor called the 68080 based on all previous versions of the Amiga processors, where all the best features and quirks have either been eliminated or improved in an effort to get a more stable processor. So it changes from last time. We still have the SD card. We've got the JTAG connector for programming the actual FPGA. Of course, HDMI is there. We've got USB ports now, and we've got Ethernet. We're in the process of doing drivers for those. And if you see here, we have expansion headers. So you can use expansion headers like what was done on the V500 Plus. It actually had some headers, and the hope is to put additional USB and additional networking connectors and that sort of stuff. Awesome. So yeah, built for expansion. It's also got the standard IDE bus, desktop bus there. And so yeah, pretty neat. So a few more connectors, bigger FPGA. This is the C5 class FPGA instead of C3. So it's designed to do a little bit more. It's got more transistors like we did last time, all the specs that we covered.
And right now that's just plugged right into the 68000.
Plugged right into the socket. This is a revision 5 board. I've tested it in revision 8A, 6A, and this revision 5.
So you removed the 68000 processor and put the Vampire in?
Yeah, on the 6A, because of the layout of the board, the Vampire kind of touches the Paula. So what I did is I got some headers, some pin extenders to actually raise up the board a little bit. And so I've been kind of seeing where it fits and where it doesn't. And I have a bunch of these boards at home, so it's pretty easy to kind of check that out. But in terms of stability, and the pins, they really did a good job of, it's German engineering, of course. They did a good job selecting the pins. So I've inserted it and reinserted it about a dozen times now without any fear of the pins going doink and disappearing forever. So that's pretty neat, right? But I found that putting them in the riser pins is another bit extra set of security to keep things from breaking, right? So it relieves the stress off of the pins on the actual board. It's also got a full IDE bus, desktop bus IDE. That's in there right now, not working. So right now we only have the laptop bus working, but you see I was able to convert it. So we have the Vampire here. The CD-ROM stuff you see is connected to the laptop style header here.
Let's see it.
So here's the laptop IDE. We have a desktop IDE bus. It's not enabled right now in this particular model. But in this prototype form, we have the laptop IDE bus, right? And that is connected to this cable. And so the cable is then connected to a laptop IDE to CF card adapter, routed to a laptop to desktop connector to the CD-ROM. The CD-ROM gets its power externally from a Molex power adapter to an AC power adapter that you would have for those interfaces that you can get that will connect a desktop IDE drive to a USB port. So I just took that to power the CD-ROM drive. I have to turn the CD-ROM drive on before turning on the Amiga, so the IDE bus on the CD-ROM has to be turned on. And then the audio is routed to another set of speakers, right? So behind the monitor, I have a smaller set of speakers.
So you're just taking like literally the headphone out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
HDMI going straight out to a scaler. Not really doing any scaling. The scaling is so that I can pull the HDMI audio out and feed a couple of speakers. So in this demonstration I'm doing here, we're going to run CD32 games off of this CD-ROM drive, right? And this is not a CD32, obviously. So the AGA chips are on here. They're on the FPGA, and we're going to be able to do the AGA games using an IDE solution and using a CD32 emulator that shipped with an IDE card. I believe it's called IDE Fix. It actually had a CD32 emulator designed to take a 4000 or a 1200 fitted with a CD-ROM drive and make it play CD32 games. The video output from the Vampire is coming here. It's coming to the input.
So the new Vampire, the V4 we saw today, has got HDMI out.
Yeah, and that HDMI output is coming into this splitter. Now I'm not particularly combining the SCART signal with the HDMI. What I'm doing is I'm using the converter to actually split the HDMI video and audio the way you see here.
So you're separating the audio out. Yeah.
So the video is then routed to the input of the monitor, and the audio is then routed to another set of speakers, which gives us the Pamela or Paula audio.
So Amiga sound comes out of the HDMI, and then the CD sound comes right out of the headphone jack and the CD drive.
Yeah. So this is working on Vampire 4, but it'll work in a Vampire 2. Cotter did it on his Vampire 2 setup, which he has in his 2000, so it'll work on there as well. I just thought it would be cool to show how far along V4 is and do this on the V4.
Does the side expansion port still work?
So does the slap on the side expansion port still work? No. So that goes all to all the lines in the CPU. And it's just like back in the day when you had an Amiga expansion, right? Could you put an expansion on the CPU and then use the slap on the side expansion port?
I believe you could, yes.
If it was RAM, right?
I think it was only one RAM board, the Insider. I think if you did put an accelerator, you could still use the side expansion
Like a
for
Supra
things
and
like
a GDP.
the hard drive controllers and RAM expansions as well. Although you probably wouldn't want to use a RAM expansion over there because it would still be 16-bit bus.
Yeah, I would say no, because this is it is a RAM expansion. It's doing a lot of stuff. I'll look into that. I think there's one guy in the group that has like a GVP on the side. I'm not sure. I have to check. In the actual developers, the testing group that we have for Apollo team. But I would advise against it. I think the answer to that is no.
Well, yeah, the biggest question is, would you really even need it at that point when you have the Vampire in there, which has RAM, which has processor? But now getting back to the processor, an 080 is not something anyone who knows Motorola processors would probably have ever heard of.
Right. So an 080 is Gunnar Van Boom's attempt to correct the mistakes made in the past via the Motorola range of processors, right? So hindsight is everything. What he's doing is looking at the mistakes made, looking at the shortcomings, and looking at developments that have happened in the processor design industry and adding those features and correcting those mistakes. So you see things like AMMX, which is an Amiga implementation of the MMX type standard, which gives us multimedia type processes that you really couldn't do in Amiga, DSP type functions, right? And we covered that in the last video. So when you look at the Neo Geo emulators, right, that's using AMMX to do things like the sound chips and a lot of the hardware that exists in that equipment, right? So you get performance that goes beyond, say, an 060 of the era, and it starts to go, it behaves like a machine that's a faster clock speed, essentially, because of the AMMX functions. And there's a lot of things going on with the way the RAM is timed and the speed of the RAM that make the system faster.
Quick poll, how creepy is it when this microphone starts approaching your face?
It's pretty scary.
You know,
It's like a probe. From
you know
a
how
science fiction
tempting
movie.
it is just to give a little nudge.
Wrong answer. Tap, tap.
Right, so what I've done here, I've done a really quick Amiga install, so some of the assigns aren't right. But I'm having it boot to a bare bones workbench here, and I'm just going to go here and set up the IDE stuff. So I installed IDE Fix 97, and so I installed it onto the programs folder. And so for this to work, I didn't put too much work into this. So what you need to do is just run this utility. It's called Find Device. So it's going to scan the IDE bus and look for any valid CD-ROM drives. So of course in the Amiga, the IDE device is called SCSI. It shows up right there, Unit 1. So you have to hit Use and then go to the CD32 emulator folder. And so I have, from back in the day when I had I copied my originals back in the day. I'm going to hell. But there's my CD32, Super Stardust, and you start this emulator. And so it has a bunch of things you can do here. You can disable fast RAM, instruction cache, all the rest of it. You can force double speed CD-ROM because the CD32 did have a double speed CD-ROM. But I tested this game, I did my homework, and this works pretty well without any of those modifications.
The reason for the options, of course, is because the CD32 didn't come with fast mem, came with, I think it's the same EC030 that the 1200 had.
Or 20,
so a lot
yes.
of games are written not expecting fast mem, not expecting faster processors, so that emulation software gave you the option to turn certain things off if a game had trouble with them.
Those extra features come because of the Vampire?
They come actually, I mean, this software predated the Vampire. This came because the Amiga itself that you might be running it on, a 4000 has an 040 potentially, a 1200 might have an accelerator and extra fast mem. It's just, it was a factor of the times that the CD32 really didn't have those options, and a lot of games didn't expect them.
So is this utility necessary to...
You can't just like install a CD-ROM driver. It's doing some things under the hood to make it actually prime it to be a CD32. So what you're going to see here, it's important to note, to preface what we're doing here, you're going to see an AGA game on a 500 that's totally running off the FPGA. So everything you see here, the AGA graphics, the sound is no longer a Paula sound, it's something called Pamela sound. So it's, I believe, 8-channel, 16-bit, scaled up. So it's coming through the HDMI. I have it going to a breakout box and that takes it to the speakers. The only thing that the Amiga is really doing is the inputs for the disk drive. The disk drive still works. And the inputs for the controllers. That's it. Everything pretty much is, the rest of that's being done with the Vampire. So they're on the road to getting this standalone thing going. The bring up happens a little bit at a time. But this is a pretty major milestone here, to have the AGA and all the rest of it booting here.
I've never seen this opening before. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Even for the time, I was looking at the other day in retrospect, it's pretty decent. So here's the CD audio. So in this game, when you have title screens, vehicle selection screens, it bounces back to the CD audio. Button presses are Paula audio, and it overlays it, which is pretty neat. I think this is like the best level selection music ever.
Yeah. Is this Paula?
No, this is CD.
This is CD audio.
Yeah. So yeah, you see CD audio plus the Paula stuff.
So it's mixing the CD32 and the Paula.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that the gunshots are the Paula.
Yeah, the gunshots, explosions are Paula, and then the CD audio is just a track. Like when you burn the CD, you actually see a separate CD audio track there that gets put to the disc.
So I guess the opening scene is something unique to the CD32 version, because I've got Super Stardust, like AGA on my 1200, but I've
it's
never
just-
seen the opening.
I mean, the
Yeah.
floppies, they just don't have the space for it.
Yeah.
So this developer did a really good job of, it's an Amiga game, but still has all the nice, dotted the I's right, crossed the T's correctly, and it looks nice, professional, and it's not in your face, and it enhances the game, and it's a good experience. How do you reset this? So after it boots the CD32, it's a CD32 now. What do you need to do on a CD32 to play another game? You lift the lid, that resets the machine, you put in another game. So here we're going to do the Amiga reset. Let's see. So now I'm going to change games.
Why does the workbench have to be 4-color?
So for this game, it uses a lot of chip RAM. So right now the AGA core is set to 2 megs chip RAM. They've done other cores where it's 4 megs chip RAM. But I guess for compatibility, they're doing it 2 megs chip first. So you have a variety of controls to let you turn the fast RAM on. I think for this, I'm going to, damn, I didn't commit my settings to memory. So I think I can boot it just by forcing double speed.
That's of the CD drive.
Yeah. So this is like it's not even a CD-ROM. It's like a DVD-RW or CD-RW, and it works. So, yeah, because it's not a CD32. It's just using an IDE Fix 97 emulator that apparently came with it. So it was designed to take a 1200 or 4000 with a CD-ROM drive and run those games. So Paul Audio, I just got to remember how to play this.
Looks like a Lotus 2 type of game.
Yeah, even the car style.
Yeah.
It's very Super Nintendo-y, or wannabe Super Nintendo-y. So things you get in this sort of game, like typical racing games on the Amiga did not have. Some of them would just have either music or car sounds, right? Because of chip RAM limitations. So when you move into the CD territory, you get both, right? You get the CD audio track and full use of Paula.
So man, you said that's a regular DVD-R, so you can just you can use pretty much any CD-ROM or DVD-ROM
Yeah, it's actually a
drive with it?
CD-RW. Yeah.
It's a CD-RW. So you don't need a special drive to work with the Vampire. You can just.
Yeah, I just got like I have a box full of CD-ROMs through the ages at my house, and I just went through the box. DVD-RWs didn't work, but anything CD related worked.
And it's just a regular IDE.
Yeah. Let's look at the TV advert. Will it play? So I've never played it on here. I wonder if CD XL will work with a Vampire. Should I have forced double speed? Oh, that's not.
Commercial.
It's too much power.
What resolution are you running it in?
So this is what the CD resolution, whatever the resolution CD put out, CD32 put out, is what you see here. The box upscales it to like 576p so that it could show on the monitor, right?
Here is the evening news. It is reported that 59 arrests were made today and 13 Securico agents injured in violent clashes at the 2-month-old pickets of Alpha Detention Center. Speaking from the center, a spokesman from the Free Javda Now campaign told our reporter that a gross miscarriage of justice had been perpetrated against an innocent man. The Securico captain on the scene, however.
What are those jerks up to now? Well, I fixed them before.
I'm surprised the color is as compressed as it is. It seems at times that they're not really using its full 256 colors. It's
What you're seeing is because it's an upscale, this is a common thing with LCDs. There's something magic that happens on a CRT, right? It's at the resolution that it's intended to be. When you take it here, you're taking those pixels, you're making them massive, like much bigger than they ever were supposed to be on screen. And they're being stretched because it's widescreen, so there's a couple of things happening that don't make it look as good as it was originally intended to be. That's why a lot of folks love CRTs, right? They love that CRT look.
Gentlemen, say hello to the good doctor. Nobody else was supposed to be here. Security could easily have noticed them without my verification. Look, stop complaining and get on with the job in hand. Then we can all go back to Axiom.
All these games had like the cyberpunky Total Recall vibe back then too.
So the thing with these games, I would see all the adverts in the magazines, the promotions, and I thought like in game, this is what you'd get, but then it was really, they were all full motion video sequences and it was storytelling, and I was like, that was the whole problem with early CD-ROM systems. So this is, this is a good what if. What if all the games look like this? What if it was a good integration of CD audio, PAL audio, and all the rest of it? It's really nice.
So this is a CD32 game. We're not doing like a Neo Geo type emulation
No,
like
no,
we
no.
did
This
last
is
time.
one of the. So by this point, I knew the artist's name for this. He's a really good artist. He went on to do work for Game Boy Advance and a lot of the later Pixel 2D platforms. Amazing artist.
It's gorgeous. It looks like Hank Nieborg's work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do 3D, and I just want to sit and do that little house in 3D. So this game is funny. Back in the day, Disposable Hero, I thought it was an AGA game. It turns out it's an ECS game.
Yeah, it's amazing. Games like Lionheart, like that Hank Nieborg did the artwork for, like they look like AGA games, but they're ECS. I'm not maybe OCS. Their talents are just incredible.
Yeah, expert palette management.
I remember this being on the cover disc of Amiga format on demo disc. That blew me away.
Who wants to try? Anybody? Don't be shy. This stuff is so old, and I don't want to break anything.
I wish you had a bomb.
Try the other buttons. Maybe you do.
Yeah, I did. There's no. Right now I only have. Oh, I have auto fire, which is great for my old man fingers. Auto fire is the key. When I play these games today, my finger goes kaput really quick.
So I'm going to turn off the machine. I'm going to hook up my CF card with the standard AGA stuff. Usually some WHD load games. So some of these games are tuned to work only with RTG. So if you want to do WHD load, I would just suggest going here.
Manny, could you explain the difference between Amiga graphics and RTG for the folks?
So when you're talking about Amiga graphics, that means you're accessing an onboard chipset designed by Commodore, either the ECS, OCS, original chipset, enhanced chipset, or AGA, Advanced Graphics Architecture, or AA Graphics Architecture. Those are chips that are designed by Commodore, and they're actually on the actual board. When you talk about RTG, that's Commodore's implementation of like a VGA-style graphics card, where it's a dedicated chipset on a card, and you can open up a screen, and that screen can open up on whatever graphics hardware you have available, right? So when you retarget your screen to a graphics card, you're not limited with resolution. Graphics cards typically have lots more color depth, a lot more resolution, so you get better performance. And just because of the way the graphics cards are designed, if you're doing something called chunky pixels, where you're doing PC-style graphics where the pixels are squared, and you're doing things like first-person shooters, the RTG graphics card is better for that, because the ECS and the OCS graphics chipsets, those were designed for television displays, which had the planar chipsets, or the planar graphics, which is rectangular type pixel, and it's not as well tuned to do that PC Doom type game, right? So that's where you'd want to actually have the RTG graphics, right? So when you come into this setup, things like Doom, Quake, Rise of the Triad, any sort of PC game, that is designed to run on RTG, right? But because of the way Commodore designed AA, it was kind of a stopgap measure to kind of give us something before we went to RTG. You can open up a screen that'll play back those same resolution files. The performance isn't as great. But you saw here, the way the AGA is implemented here, it's actually, you don't notice it too much, right? It looks pretty fast, right? You can't really tell you're doing a AA chipset, which is pretty neat. The core is actually running at X14, which is 14 times the speed of the original Amiga 500, which is 7.16 megahertz. So that equates to like 114 megahertz if you use any of the benchmarks here, which is pretty neat.
So before you were running in CD32 mode, and you had a CD32 controller hooked up to an Amiga 500, and that's hooked up to the standard 9-pin port. But the CD32 has got more than the traditional, one-button layout. So do all those buttons work?
Yeah, they all work just fine. So yeah, that emulator, just like WHD Low, it picks up the signals from the extra signals that the CD32 controller has, and is able to integrate that into the emulation, which is pretty neat.
That's awesome.
And the Amiga implementation of the 9-pin joystick port actually could always handle multiple buttons. unlike the old Atari, but because of the fact that it mostly used old Atari joysticks, they only had one button, so you rarely had games that supported them until things like the CD32 came out.
Yeah, baby.
So yeah, now this is 600 by 200. It's not the full high res because the way the flickering works right now, it's not working 100%. You would see either odd or even frames, and it doesn't look too clean. Or actually tries to interlace. It doesn't. Bottom line, it doesn't look good. So we're running it 600 by 200, 256 colors. So yeah, I mean.
So now in this first version of the Vampire V4, it doesn't do interlace, so you can do like 640 by 200, but you want to do 640 by 400, it's not there yet. But that's something obviously they're going to work on and implement in a future core of the Vampire. So this is a WHD load version of Doom?
Yeah, so what it does here, it recognizes all the Vampire graphics modes, which are lots of them. But I'm going to do PAL low res, and there we go. So, I mean, no matter how fast Vampire is, this is topped out at 35 frames. And remember, this isn't RTG, this is AGA.
Never thought I'd see Doom on an Amiga 500.
Running AGA.
Yeah, AGA. So theoretically, like any AGA or OCS WHD load game should just work with this setup.
In theory, yeah. So there's a lot of them don't. I shouldn't say a lot. Some don't. In my personal experience, it's about 75–80%. Out of that 75–80%, some of them have glitches, some don't. But this is PC style graphics, so anything that can work on a screen, on an AGA type screen, RTG screen will work.
So now, obviously, all these games running off the compact flash card, no more CD-ROM drive. It's no longer CD32 emulation.
Yeah, and you can just, if you have your stack of games, you can install OS 3.9 and install this yourself. You don't have to use any of the distributions out there. I've done that myself. Well before I was on Vampire Team per se, I had that going. Let's close this out.
Yeah, on my 1200, I just have a bunch of WHD load games and a directory on my compact flash hard drive, and away I go. But now I can do it on the 500 with the Vampire.
So let's look at,
That's awesome.
Get out of the A's, because we know what letter I'm going to, do we not, Bill?
W?
You know it.
I know you.
And there's Walker. Here we go.
Oh, Walker works great on this.
Oh, the killing starts. Oh, do it to it. Oh, yeah. Fucking trash.
Of course, the irony here is that Walker is an OCS game, so you don't really need the Vampire, but but he is playing it off WHD load, so.
And the game's coming off of the Vampire chipset too.
Oh, cool. So that's a neat twist on it for sure. When I played Walker on my 500, I would use either floppies or I would use the GoTech. But now you can just do it right off WHD load.
What's the GoTech you're referring to?
The GoTech is a floppy drive emulator, so you can load floppy disk images onto a USB stick, and it replaces your floppy drive. It plugs in exactly where your the actual floppy drive plugs in. And it's got buttons, so you can insert a new image file, so you get one disk at a time. Okay. All right, Manny, thanks again for coming to WAUG. It's always a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Thank you guys. It was good to do this, and
Thanks,
hopefully we can do it again. Later, guys.
Amiga forever.
And we'll see you on the next episode of the Guru Meditation. Sweet.
Awesome,
I'm attracted to it.
Seriously, thanks for everyone for coming. We'll test out Will's thing.
I'll just stand here.
You'll stand there and look beautiful.
Funny faces.
I don't know if you saw the last video, but I just did a little.
I don't watch our channel.